PPW legends Jerry Lynn and Mikey Whipwreck. Now, let's welcome your host, Mike Freland.
Good evening. Welcome to Front Row Material. It is Tuesday night. As you know, we always start off with an awesome part of our show called Future Stars Now. But before we get there, let me introduce my good longtime partner. His name is
The Ritt.
Ritster. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. A little tired. Well, I'm dead. I'm like, it's beyond that. These past 24 hours of my life, I cannot wait to hit the old bed ski.
Well, but you got to be happy though, right? You tell everybody what you told me before, what the last 24 hours of your life has looked like and why it has all been worth it.
Oh man, 24 hours. I went up to Boston, watched me some Sox, which I've got my iPad right now, watching the game 4 right now. So, but yeah, watching the Sox, take out those trash cans. Left the game at around 11:15 last night, 11:30. Drove home 6 hours. Took a little 2-hour nap ski. Got home at 8 o'clock. Drove to work. Got there at 9:15 and worked till 5:30. And here I am now with you, Mike, and with our amazing guest that is going to give us a little bit of his time tonight.
Well, I tell you what you just described, pro wrestlers do that every single day.
Hey.
Isn't that crazy? They make that commute. How they have the energy to still do what they do and be on the road and drive and travel and hotels and this and that. The more I learn about pro wrestling, the more I realize I have so much respect for what they do inside that bell rings, but there's so much that they got to do even way before that happens just to get prepared and the travel and the grind. I think our guest tonight's going to tell us a lot about that. And I'm excited to hear all of his stories and everything he has to share with us.
Man, I sit there and I enjoy watching two big monsters like go head to head. And 2 months ago when I seen our guest and Moose go at it, I was like, holy shit. Like, man, you talk about, the irresistible force and the movable object. That was these two. And Mike, man, everybody, you guys still want to check it out, head on over to Fight TV. It's the 8th anniversary show for PPW.
You can still get it. Go ahead and order it right now. It's definitely a show you're not going to want to miss. And when it comes out on DVD or digital download, whatever the thing is nowadays that you can do. I caught myself saying, man, when this comes out on VHS, and I stopped myself and went, okay, yep, I'm officially that get off my lawn guy now. Definitely. VHS, jeez.
But hey, Mike, people here are they don't want to come to see us.
They don't want to hear us talk. They want to hear pro wrestlers talk.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and let's give them what they want.
Let's bring on in the Green Machine, Mr. Mike Orlando.
What's up, guys?
Man, how you doing, Mike?
Good. It's good to be here, guys. Thank you for having me on.
It is our pleasure, and like we said before, I mean, if you didn't get a chance to check out that 8th anniversary show, which was amazing, please make sure you get a chance to check it out again. Mike, you are a very intimidating individual right there, just sitting right there. I can't even begin to imagine when you are ready to tear someone's head off, what is going through your opponent's head, because right now you're smiling at me, but I'm sure that smile can go away very quickly. And as Negan would say on Walking Dead, it's pee-pee pants time.
I mean, yeah, I've been told my whole life I have a constant, face where everybody kind of assumes the worst. But like, if you ever talk to me, I'm the most laid back, calm, cool, collected person. It's the opposite of how I mean, don't get me wrong. If something goes out, it's different. But as a person myself, I think I'm super approachable. But it's so funny because even like I run a gym and I have 2,000 members. I can't tell you like how many of them won't even look straight down when they walk in and things like that. And I'm sitting there in my little shirt like, hey, and then half of them don't even want to hear it. I was listening a little bit about what you were talking about being, on the road and going to Boston and all that and having to come home. And I literally struck a nerve. I was like, yep, I totally get him, man. It's my constant life. And it's weird because it's different now because of everything with the pandemic. But now having two full-time jobs, I guess you could say, and then wrestling on top of it, it's, wow. So when you said that, I was like, yep, I totally feel him. I literally just walked out of one place, gave my students a little sheet out there so they have a practice schedule and what they should be doing in the time that we're doing this, and then just sat down for the first time probably all day. And it's just, yeah, so I feel you. It's pretty good to be back, I guess you could say.
So there's so many things that we want to get into, so much meat on the bone, as they will say. But I think the first thing we always like to get into is, I guess the main why pro wrestling more than anything else. I mean, when we're growing up, especially guys, firefighters, police officers, this, that, maybe sports players, football players, whatever. My very first pay-per-view is going to date me. It's WrestleMania 3. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. Actually, I wanted to be like Bobby Heenan. But what was it for you? Was it when you were a child, when you were maybe a little bit older than that? Why was it pro wrestling that caught your eye?
That's a great question. I don't really watch sports. I don't watch anything really like that. I had a almost professional football career, and I've never watched a football game in my life. And it's always been wrestling to me since I was little. It just, my sister loved it, so I was the accident child. I say that, and I mean it. But my siblings are older than I, so when I was younger, everybody was watching wrestling when it was the cool thing, and I just never put it down. I just always watched it, and I was a heavyset kid growing up, kind of a loser, and wrestling was like my escape. Yeah, I always thought like I lived in this imaginary world. And when I got older, I did what I could, I guess you could say, with sports, and I paid for my college, and it did things like that for me. But I never had the passion like I did with wrestling. And it's just what you were saying about WrestleMania 3. I guess I just turned 30, so I mean I'm dating myself like a little bit when I talk about this stuff, but it was mostly when Cactus Jack came back, and I didn't know who Cactus Jack was. This is in the 90s, like when the Hell in the Cell time was going on. And I knew nothing of who he was until he came out. And I was like, I know him. Like, that's Mankind. And it all started making sense. And I started going to school with, like, different personalities. And I was probably the weird kid. I would go in there and be like, oh, today I'm Mike, tomorrow I'm this guy, the next day I'm this guy. And I literally would do it. And they would, call my house and tell my mom, like, is he good? What's going on? But I would play all these little characters perfect. And that's kind of where it all started. And it kind of carried over into college because I had a great college football coach, probably one of the best mentors in my life. And I just was a character, man. I never watched football, so I didn't. I got the teamwork stuff, and I was good at it, but I was the guy at 5 a.m. in the weight room with my replica WWE championship belt screaming at the top of my lungs and all face paint on for no reason. And everybody's looking at me like, this guy's nuts, but he's a good teammate. So, like, one day I showed up I partied a lot in college like everybody else, and I was never used to that life. So when I became a football guy and had all this, I guess, open space to party, I did, and I didn't know any better. So one day I showed up late for weight room, and I came with my belt and my face all painted up, and I was about 5 minutes late. And my coach was like, I'm not sure why you're here. And he wouldn't let me come in the weight room and said because I was late, I was going to learn my lesson type of thing. And I cut a whole promo on him and was like, da, 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 in front of all my teammates. And the next day I showed up to practice like normal. And as I got there, he told me I wasn't coming on the practice field. And I didn't understand why. And he had a bunch of pamphlets to a place called Old Time Wrestling that he had printed out on the computer. And he threw them at me and was like, go be a wrestler. You're not a football player, clearly. You don't want to be. And it struck a nerve. And I was like, whoa,
Wow.
like this is right here. And he looks me square in the face and was like, it's about 2 hours away. And I was up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and this was all the way in, it's Paulsboro, I think is where it is where the current H2O building is, the independent wrestling one. But I'm going to show you was my idea, and I'm going to go to wrestling. And then I drove the 2 hours, left football practice, and got to Old Time Wrestling, where I didn't know at the time Jim Molyneux, former ECW referee, which is why I laughed when I saw this, and Ed, I guess Atlas, I don't remember his name. He's a nut job from Canada. I love him to death, but I don't know where he is anymore or anything about it, but he was Jim's partner for Old Time Wrestling at the time. And I got there, and they already spoke to my football coach. And they were like, okay, yeah, he called, and you're not even stepping foot in this ring until you learn discipline, until you do this, until you do that. And my football coach was basically help paying and funding my wrestling school as long as I showed up to practice on time and did the stuff I was supposed to do at football.
Wow.
So if I wanted my dream to come true, I had to play football, was kind of the deal. So I would go wake up at 5 a.m. for our practice in the morning, go to class all day, football around 3 o'clock to about 8 o'clock, about 7 o'clock, go sit in the car for 2 hours immediately from football, get to wrestling training around 9:30 and stay till about 1. And then get back around 3 a.m., sleep for about 2 hours, and go to football practice every single day. So if I didn't get a kick in the ass then, like that was what really kind of made me a pro wrestler. And that's why pro wrestling, because I had to do something I didn't want to do, which I did, and I guess as I look back on it. But at the time, I didn't want to be a football player or any of that. I just wanted to be a pro wrestler once I had a taste of it. But in order to fund it and everything, I had to play football. So it was a fun little start, but that's the only reason I know pro wrestling. I could never go play football again. I tried out with the XFL. I could never do it again. I found my niche, and like this is what I'm sticking with, no matter what happens. I mean, at this point.
Well, Mike, I'm going to have to give you props. One day of that happened in my 24 hours was your every day. I couldn't do it. Like
it was kind of a competition with myself. He didn't think I could do it either, and that was like, okay, I'm gonna show this guy why I like wear makeup in the weight room and run around with a championship belt. Like I really am this guy. So it was that's where the green machine came from. I wore green on the football field, and everybody wore blue. And my coach used to always ask me why I wear green, and then my answer was because when I go to these parties, nobody knows what we look like under our helmets and our pads, but when I say the crazy guy that was wearing all green, everybody knows who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always be like, oh, dude, green machine, green machine, green machine. And finally it just stuck. And everybody was calling me green machine. And that's where that comes from.
So Mike, what was your first taste or first bit of ECW?
So I watched ECW for the first time ever and had no idea what I was watching because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning when it would come on. And I was watching, I think it was Adult Swim. It was like Space Ghost or something like that. And I had to be maybe 7 or 8 years old, and something scary happened. I don't remember what it was, but it scared me to death. And I remember changing the channels. Like, I don't want to watch this anymore at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I just stumbled upon ECW. And specifically, the event that was going on was basically right after the mass transit incident.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And I remember watching this and knowing wrestling was fake as a kid. And they didn't show anything at this point, but they were talking about everything. And the internet really wasn't a thing, but we had a computer in the house, don't pick up the phone because we're going to lose internet connection type of thing. So I remember hearing them talk about it, apologizing for it. I remember they brought it up after very briefly. And I went online, I went in the computer room, turned on the computer, and Googled what happened. And it wasn't like YouTube was just like a pop-up thing where I could see a video of it. It was like, okay, Napster, download the link. So I had to like download it, and I remember like waiting all night. And I fell asleep, woke up for school. And then as I woke up, it was done. And right before I went to school, I watched it and was like, you know what I mean? And then like kind of didn't know what to think, but at the same time, I was like, ah, it's scripted. This is all scripted. And I loved ECW because it was just, I knew at 2 o'clock in the morning I was going to see something crazy. And it was like worth staying up for because I knew my parents weren't going to bother me. So if there was someone naked on there, I was going to get away with watching it. Like it was such cool little like little things as a kid you never knew what to expect. And that was my first taste, was watching the mass transit incident. Like I remember I watched a little bit of the show that night, but I was so concerned about what they were talking about that I had to find out what happened during that. And then I just fluently just started watching ECW left and right and became a huge Taz fan. And that's part of like half my arsenal comes from Taz. He was just an awesome grappler that just kind of threw everybody around for the size he was, and he was small doing it. So if a big guy does it, it's even bigger. You know, and I don't mean that by small by any means. I'm saying considered to the stars he was at, you know, around at the time.
Right.
But yeah, that was my first taste was Mass Transit, and then I watched everything up until the closing, and I remember Kurt Angle showing up and that whole thing happening, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, having no idea who Kurt Angle was, other than the fact that these were reruns half the time, and I was watching Kurt Angle on WWE and was like, oh, he was there, and then Nunzio debuted in WWE, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he's on that ECW show. And then as you get older, you start realizing how pro wrestling really goes. And it's cool to kind of see that happening again with pro wrestling.
I'm trying to think about the whole Eric Kulas situation. You had Devon Dudley, and he was supposed to be teaming up with, I want to say it was, oh gosh, was it Balls Mahoney? But Balls wasn't able to be there.
Yes.
So Devon teamed up with Mass Transit. Yep. And they went against New Jack and I don't want to say it wasn't Mustafa, but maybe it was Mustafa.
Wow, I'm blanking here.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. I'm being corrected. It was one of the it was one of the Rottens who couldn't make it. Sorry about that.
Yes.
It was Axel Rotten.
And then they never I believe they never found out Eric's age. He just said he was trained in a pro wrestler, and they just kind of took him on at the time. But they did issue an apology for it afterwards. It was the most insincere apology in the world. But I remember that was what dragged me in. I remember watching that, and I had to find out what happened.
Phone conversations early on when I was talking with Mikey and Jerry, the founders of this program. We talked about how ECW was Fight Club before Fight Club was a thing, because it was basically this underground thing where it was pro wrestlers, but it was a lot of guys that you could see yourself in. Regular guys who would just get in there, and they made it so believable with that grungy feel to it that you literally thought you were watching a fight. I mean, there was weapons used. It wasn't your typical, steel chair or something like that. It was anything. I mean, there was toasters and there was, VCRs and yes, and it was all this crazy stuff. And I think that's what made it so appealing, was because it literally was like two guys brawling, grabbing anything they could, frying pans. People were knocked out unconscious literally at points of times. Sabu's body was completely destroyed and torn apart. He tapes up. He keeps going. It was just incredible. But so ECW really was something that appealed to you, and Taz was somebody who you really liked and you enjoyed watching. Was there anybody else additionally in ECW that caught your eye?
Rob Van Dam. I mean, I literally, I still to this day, I mean, that's my favorite wrestler probably to this day. I'm still challenging him left and right on Twitter, even though he doesn't even answer me, trying to get a match going. We were going to have one right around the Impact one night stand things they were doing back in PPW, actually. And I blew my knee out right before that was all about to go down. And even tried to get back as fast as possible to try to do it within 4 months. And I was nowhere near where I was supposed to, and I ended up wrestling Michael Elgin for the one night stand thing they do, or one night only, excuse me. And I am happy I didn't wrestle RVD in that match, because I could barely get up the steps into the ring, let alone wrestle a match. If Elgin wasn't so strong and could just throw me around the way he did, that was all him. I couldn't even remotely jump anything. And if I would have had to wrestle RVD, he probably would have knocked my teeth out. So it's kind of a good thing, but that was my everything. Frog splash in the bed, to my haircut my whole life, to just always following, I guess, the motto. And that's just kind of how I am as a person. That's why I started. I was saying I was laid back. It's just someone more laid back than him.
Were you surprised, getting back to the story about your high school coach, were you surprised that he embraced your desire for pro wrestling? Because I think in most cases, if somebody's not showing that they're, or showing some interest in other things, they may just say, what, this ain't for you, you're done or whatever. But the fact that he embraced it, and the fact that he supported it, and the fact that he did those steps to help you make those first connections, that had to also be really, really cool, that you got that feeling of support from him.
I think a lot of it had to do with the idea of it was college, so like he, I guess, recruited me for a very long time. We had a personal connection. I had chosen a lot of better schools on paper to be with him, and it just he took care of me before I even got there. I mean, he would send me T-shirts, things like that. It wasn't to sell me. It was just because he knew I had interest. So he paid attention to my interest for about 2 years before recruiting started. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was about 6'4", probably about 315 pounds. And I was fast, I could move, and I was just reckless, I guess. And he loved that. And I knew that he knew I was committed, and I loved what I did as far as wrestling goes. And I think he wanted to get that same energy out of me for football. He didn't want to give up on me. So I think what he did was kind of throw me a bone and was like, let me give him this because he'll give me XYZ in return. And I did. I mean, I once he did that, I mean, I turned to this man for everything. Everything. Advice, relationship advice, when I was going through issues. I mean, he and I had a very, still do to this day, a good connection. And I just think that it helped me as a person grow, because there's no world that you're about to be a pro football player and you're like to your parents, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick to wrestling. And they're like, oh, you're wrestling in front of 15 people in a warehouse. What do you mean you're to stick to wrestling? Go play professional football and make a living. And I think I'm going to stick to wrestling. So obviously my parents were very successful people, were very against me doing it. And to this day, I mean, they're very supportive now. Completely different people. But back then, I was a college student. I was trying to graduate, and I had credits to a million different degrees, but not one degree set in stone, because I didn't care about school. I just cared about the football part. So I was taking art classes for criminal justice, and they're like, what the hell are you taking art for? And eventually it kind of all came to, and I had to go to 2 separate degrees. But I think my parents realized, like, okay, he's all over the place. He needs this football thing to make some money in his life. I stuck with wrestling and I did it my way, and I did it a very different way. But now, to this day, now my parents are very happy that I did it my own way, because I'm just turned 30. I have my own house that I own in Florida. I have a wrestling school. I did something right. And I think now, at least after the injuries, I had my first injury, and my parents were like, okay, you're done, right? And no. So I came back, and then after about 7 months, the other knee happened, and they were like, okay, we're done, right? And I'm, nope. And I think now they just realize, after seeing me in a wheelchair for 2 years, if I'm going to get up and go do it again, well, you might as well support him at this point, because clearly he's not going to change his mind. And it helped me better my relationship with them. And I thank my coach for that a lot, because he gave me the confidence to try something different. I knew no better at the time. I would never have found a wrestling school or anything like that on my own, because I guess I was too in the moment to engulf with the whole college football player life and enjoying all the time out and everything. And he had to come knock on my door half the time to wake me up for practice in the morning. So I had it easy, until I kind of had a chance to step out of that circle. So if it wasn't for him, I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Well, Mike, a man of your size and strength, I'm kind of curious. You have to be on the line. I'm guessing offensive line?
Yep, I was an offensive guard and tackle.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was 315 in my senior year. Yeah, 315 pounds pulling guard.
Hey, next time I'm at PPW, I might have to have my son get some advice from you. He's
he's a football player.
First year, he's 11 years old, 5'5". You seen him at the shows, 5'5", 210. Yeah. First year playing football, and he's just the coach loves it. He's just like just knock him over.
That was my job. I knew nothing. Every huddle. I mean, if you have good teammates, that's the best advice I could ever give. Good teammates and a good coach will change everything. Because I would read the play over and over. I would look at my playbooks. I would study them. When it came down to it, I had no idea. Is this a pass play? Is this a run play? I never knew what to do. But I had the best center. His name was James Pratt, that I could possibly think of. And he would look at me and be like, run play, 65. Okay. 65 is my guy, and it's a run play. And I'd come out of my stance and absolutely annihilate 65. And it's just that aura kind of that you get. People on the field can feel that. And when you're a team and you're actually acting cohesive, it's crazy what you can do. And you put the egos aside, you put everything aside. It's like, okay, Mike has no idea what the play is, so every time we're going to remind him. But this quarterback here is definitely not going to get hit as long as Mike's in front of him. So we just had each other's back. And I mean, that's the best advice I can give him, is just be the best teammate you could possibly be. Even if his team sucks. Like, seriously. Like, we were, I think, 3-7 my first year in college. My second year, we won the NCAA championship and got a ring. I mean, same players, same everything. And just, we all had each other's back. So, especially at 11, this is the time he's going to start developing himself into the player he wants to be. He's going to get some confidence. He's going to grow up. He's going to go through changes. That's like exactly where he wants to be right now.
Yeah, he has a guy, the guard, really good friend of his. He actually does exactly what your center did for him. He sits there and looks over him and says, 72. He knows 72 is the guy he's taking out, you know.
And he will always have that center's back, believe me, or the guard, excuse me. He'll always have his back because he knows he needs that guy. So if someone's going to come earhole that guy and he has nothing to do, believe me, he's going to get there and take that guy over real quick. So I don't miss football, but I definitely miss my team. That's why I didn't make it at the next level. I had my teammates, and that was what got me there. And once I got there, it was.
It's a lot of successful people say it's not necessarily the sport what it is. It's about the camaraderie that you develop with other people, the relationships. Mikey and Jerry both said, we don't miss the wrestling. We miss the people. We miss the relationships that we had. That was the galvanizing force between people, because when you build these relationships and you have trust with somebody, that is something that you don't find every day with a lot of people. And that is something very special. And like you said before, with your college coach, that's not something that happens every day. That's a very special relationship. I guess my next question would be, when it comes to relationships, what was it like with Jim Molyneux? What was it like first meeting him? What was it like going ahead and picking his brain? And I'm sure there were some ECW questions and stories that definitely that happened at school.
Well, it's funny. I actually met Mikey through Jim. He had sent me to New York to Mikey's school up there to do a couple shows and whatnot, and I ended up being a full-time guy on Mikey's roster. And so that right there should tell you the kind of stuff that I know and heard and everything. And it's just, now I'm from a privileged area of New Jersey. My family was always poor, but we were in a privileged area, so I'm not used to hearing crazy things, So joining wrestling, I was exposed to the craziest of things. And it's just walking into this warehouse, and after looking at the pamphlets, I don't know what I'm going to be facing, what I'm going to see. So I'm expecting, I don't know indie wrestling at this time. I don't really know much about it. I'm expecting an arena type thing, and I'm going to be training in an arena. So I walk in, and it was a warehouse, just a warehouse, lights barely on, leaking ceiling. And the stage was a piece of wood with a curtain over it. And he had the heels and the baby faces not even anywhere near each other. Couldn't talk before matches or anything like that. Very old school. And I walked in, and it was the last thing I was expecting was that. And then I just fell in love with it, I guess. It was like, this is so cool. Oh, my God. And then the ring was an ECW ring. So Jim was like, oh, this is one of the ECW rings. And at this point, I'm still a mark. I'm like, oh, my God. Rolled in the ring, throwing myself all over the ropes, trying to feel the turnbuckles for the first time. Jim was very patient with me because I was a very gifted athlete. So instantly I picked it up pretty quick. And by week 4, thought I knew it all. So I remember one time I did a leapfrog in my first match, and I was told not to do anything like that. I did it. And I remember just the kind of old school aura that was backstage afterwards. I would never do it again because it was just that I think these guys are going to beat the hell out of me, everybody in the locker room right now. I think they're all about to just team up and beat the shit out of me. And I meant it. I really thought, in my head, it's who am I to go do that? Who am I to go do this? And then I started getting wrestling. Jim's best quality was he would give you advice, but he would never make you do it. It was I would do this. Okay. Never said, oh, you better make sure you do this. And what I could say about him is every time he gave you advice, and if you ever went against it, you were probably wrong. And he was a very good mentor in the sense that he saw wrestling from a different point of view all the time and knew what good wrestling was and what bad wrestling was by having to watch other people do it constantly and to hear what the crowd was reacting to. And the drills we did compared to what I see other schools doing now and everything. And Ed had a huge play in this, but he they were very situational based and helped me out a lot in my career because of things that Jim saw that didn't work and the crazy stories that Jim had dealt with and kind of transferred over to us. Like, oh, don't do that because this one time I saw Dreamer do that with so and so. Match absolutely sucked and we had to go 10 minutes watching it. And it's like, well, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because that's definitely, you were there, so you know what happened. And I just think Jim, he never yelled, he never screamed, but he was intimidating. It was just he had an aura, like I said. He had something to him where I knew, even though I came from a privileged area, that this warehouse with this ring with the lights barely on was exactly where I had to be to learn how to do this pro wrestling thing. And he was just no nonsense. If I was late for practice, it was just like, okay, we'll sit out. Glad you came because you made the drive, and that's it. And he wouldn't always be bad guy or bad cop. He would have Ed do it 90% of the time. But he was, Tony Soprano back there making sure that, hey, this kid doesn't step foot in the ring until he goes and cleans the bathroom. And that's good. I should learn that because I was a privileged college player that wasn't paying for school and can go put my hand in the dirt and get paid for it. So now I come into wrestling and I think I knew it all. Like, it was something that I needed to humble out. And that was the best place to humble out from me. And I think they had a fallout at the time with the Munson Factory. And that drove Jim to make his own thing and make it super successful. So it was a very ego-driven thing, but not in the sense of a bad ego. It was like, hey, we're going to do this right, and we're going to do it this way, and this is how it is. If you don't want to do it, there's the door. And I teach these guys the same way. I would never call myself a trainer. I'm just helping wrestling. I'm just helping out people that want to do this. And if you're trained, if you're not trained, whatever it is, we'll work with you and get you better. But this is what the concept of what Jim had was. You have the best people around you to get better, but I'm not promising anything I can't be captain. So introducing me to Mikey and stuff at the time, that was awesome. And I'll never forget those moments in my life. It doesn't matter where my career goes from this point. I'll never forget like the 2-hour car ride going up to, I think it's Long Island, going up to Long Island and just, oh my God, I'm about to go see Michael Whipwreck and wrestle in his building and do this. Those feelings don't go away. Every time you step foot in those rings, you remember, oh, when I was 21, I was here. It's pretty cool. I wrestled the other day, it popped up in my memories, Tony Nese in one of his last indie matches before going to the WWE in that building. And when it popped up in my memories, it's like, damn, like how come this doesn't sit all the time with me? Like, why don't I think about this stuff? And it kind of, I had a good upbringing with the wrestling thing with Jim.
Well, Mike, what's the one thing you think like students are missing nowadays compared to the old school teachings?
It depends on the student, I guess. The diehard wrestling fans that are students now, the thing missing is kind of their idea of wrestling. It's how you teach it. I mean, I don't teach anything I don't know. So I look at wrestling as flavors of ice cream. So your way might be right. That flavor might be good. It's just not my way, and I don't like it. So I kind of want all ideas to be out there. Because who's to say, oh, you're a big guy, so you shouldn't be going up the top rope. Then you watch Brian Cage doing a shooting star press on AEW, and you're like, as you're sitting in a warehouse and trying to teach people wrestling. So it's like you can't act like you know it all. And I think that a lot of wrestlers, the best ones are the ones that almost know nothing. They come in with a total blank slate and they know nothing about what they should be doing. And you kind of just teach them certain ways and see what works, rather than a lot of the fans that become wrestlers and they have this idea of what they want to be. And then you look at them and you're like, oh, well, you're not that. So I think the biggest thing with wrestling is kind of the knowledge now. The knowledge of what the current product is and what's going on. It may not be the way 10 years ago when you were a kid. That image that you're trying to portray may not work anymore. So I think that's the biggest thing. Plus, spade's a spade. No one goes to the gym anymore. I mean, we got to get these wrestlers in better shape. And it's not to say bigger wrestlers aren't okay. I mean, that's fine. But like your overall health matters by going to the gym, and it reflects in your body. I mean, you can all tell the wrestlers that work out and the ones that don't. So how, as a wrestler, can I trust you not to drop me on my head if you don't even go to the gym to lift up weight equivalent to what I weigh? So flavors of ice cream is the problem, and also the ethics of work.
Mike, do you feel like, in your opinion, that people nowadays, and once again, you can't paint with a broad brush. Um, Sometimes people want to get into wrestling for the wrong reasons, and they want to get into it because they either a good-looking guy or a really good-looking girl, and they see the opportunity to get in, and they see an opportunity to make a name for themselves. But what they don't understand is everything that happens in between that. You know, a pretty face and a pretty body can get you so far. But like you were talking about before, if you don't have the fundamentals, if you don't have the tutelage and you know what to do and how to take care of each other and how to hone your craft, a look will only get you so far.
Yeah, agreed. Um, yeah, getting into it for outside reasons. I mean, but the problem with that is it does work for some people. You know, it does actually work in some cases, but then if you're following that route, I feel there's no guarantee with this stuff. You know, so to kind of depend on just one thing, you're really not broadening your horizons enough. You know, and Mikey made a joke. He said that he's made a lot of money not working out. And again, exceptions to the rule. Like it's 100% true, 100% true. Okay, but I mean, it's just a common thing where it's not the Mikey Whipwrecks, it's not the talented wrestlers, it's people that are just able to come on this side of the fence, and that kind of goes to the looks and the bodybuilders and all these people that cross over because of. But that's not to knock their dream. Wrestling's for everybody. I'm not saying it's not, but you have to know where you kind of stand in this whole thing. If that kind of makes sense, like
No,
me
it does.
personally, like I want to be on TV. So to be the big fish in the little pond, I'm not in. Not that I'm not enjoying this. This isn't where I want to be. So I practice exactly how I want to be there. So I go to the gym. I do all the things it says on paper to do because that's my end goal. But that's not to say on indie wrestling, if you're somebody that just enjoys doing this, that's you could still have your break and just be having fun at the same time. So I don't want to knock people, but those people going in for the looks and everything like that, they don't know a quarter of what goes into this. So they usually weed themselves out pretty quick.
Was there anybody during your training with Jim or even people that you met early on in your career that you realized just by talking to them for 5 minutes, man, they want it. Man, they are focused. They are driven. And now, you know, you can see that it really has paid off. Anybody, in your opinion, that you got to know early on that you thought had the it factor definitely did?
Yeah, I make the joke about it all the time, but the little Not Your Brother character I ran for a while was based off of 90% of my friends being on TV now. And it's not a knock. I'm not mad or anything. It was just what I was rocking with and going with at the time, you know. But yeah, that class of people that I kind of surrounded myself with from about 2010 I started, 2010 till seeing now, I mean, 90% of them are either on WWE or AEW now. And it's a cool feeling because when you know, you know. And like Sonny Kiss, one of my absolute best friends. And we all knew, everybody knew from day one, like, oh, he's going to be great. He's going to do something awesome. And it's encouraging to see my friends in those positions now because it makes me get up from the wheelchair and actually keep working so I can get right next to them, if that makes sense. But like Sonny Kiss, Cody Vance, Preston Vance now of the Dark Order, Joey Janela, just all Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle started with the Monster Factory. I mean, we from day one we got to see him go, and you know I wasn't with the factory at the time, but he was in my circle of friends all over New Jersey, and then eventually we started doing the indies and stuff in New York together. And you always knew when he was with Evolve and I had my little run with them, you always knew Matt Riddle was a star. It was just a matter of time of when he would get his chance. And I'm hanging on that thought. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I'm just waiting for the when moment. I kind of kept myself silent for the last year because it just wasn't healthy enough to come back and be the real me. I didn't want to come back like the run I had right before this injury where I could barely move. So I ghosted myself and wrestled very sporadically and safely until I knew it was time to actually pull the trigger again. And now I'm pulling the trigger and making sure everybody knows like I'm 100%, I'm back and ready to go. But if I learned anything from those guys, they stayed the course, and they never ever worried about when. They just enjoyed every moment. And I've always been a guy that's always been waiting for the destination and not enjoying the moment. And I regret that, and I fixed it. So, yeah, that the most standout of that would probably be Sonny Kiss. I mean, I started with Brian Johnson, who's having a great run right now in Ring of Honor, but he was our trainer at the time. So to start under a trainer, you think this guy's the best anyway. You know, so it's cool to see everybody I kind of surrounded myself with getting to the next level right now.
Is there any tips or information just as far as the business itself that Sonny or anyone else that you're close to has ever given you? Just, hey, FYI, always remember this, or remember that, or hey, don't forget this.
Yeah. Basically to shut up. And I'm not kidding. Yeah, that's basically what they say very nicely. Like, hey, we know what you're feeling and what you're saying, but bottle it away and just keep doing what you're doing. And that's where I kind of disappeared for the last year a little bit, and purposely did that. Was like, let me restart. I wrestled in Florida for a couple of places, you know, but I wore like jeans and a t-shirt. And that's not to say I didn't care. It's just I wasn't in it yet. I wasn't mentally there. But I'd go home and, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, get all upset because I wasn't where I wanted to be, and go on Facebook and be like, bah, 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 bah. And I wouldn't call people out or anything, but it just was an unprofessional look, and it just wasn't me. And yeah, they would just be like, hey, man, that post, take it down, like now. So the best advice I can give anybody that they've given me is to bottle your emotions and don't tell everybody when good things or bad things are coming, and just wait for them to happen and, you know, live in the moment.
I like that.
Well, Mike, I have a question I love to ask all of our guests.
Oh, geez.
And I hope you're ready for it.
Oh, boy.
Hot tub time machine.
Here we go.
You can go back into time to any match in wrestling history. Take somebody out of the match, and you, Mike Orlando, are going in the match. What match is it and why?
All right. I'm going to probably... That's a good one, man.
Don't make
Let's
his head
say-
get any bigger than it needs to be, Mike. He hangs on this right here. This is going to be his claim to fame in pro wrestling.
So I'm going to go with, and I'm forgetting what the pay-per-view was, but the first TLC match with the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian. And I'm going to replace myself with, let's say, Matt Hardy, and be in that moment. Reason being, as a kid, when you bought all the toys and all the new weapons were coming out and all the new figures were coming out with all their new scans and everything, that was my childhood. And it was like, that was a thing as a kid. I had to get the new ladders. I had to get the new this. That's innovative. I mean, before that, we're just buying bone crunching figures and nobody cared what they came with because you love the characters. At this time, these guys took something, made it unique, branded it, and it made themselves seem larger than life, even though they weren't on the Undertaker scale or the scale of Kane or these big guys that looked like, and every one of them emerged out of there successful. As a singles competitor, as a tag team, as everything they have ever done in wrestling, they were successful. Why? Because they got it. At the time, they knew what it was. And those matches weren't very crazy. I mean, they were for their time, but nothing too dangerous where people would die. But they knew that this would be something that everybody kind of, you know, adhered to. And from you bought action figures that you already had just because it came with a table. Like, when would you say things like, and I mean, anybody who was a collector knows, like, this was a thing. Like, you had to have all these tables and all these whatnots as a kid. And whenever you mention wrestling to somebody, okay, 90% of the time they're talking about the Hardy Boys or something like that to you. So I'm going to say that would be the moment, because I would like to do something that stood out in that match that nobody else would remember. I mean, instead of just on Impact, again, I'm acting like I'm gloating here, but I stole the spot with Casey Navarro with hanging from the championship belt or whatever, and then spearing him off the, you know, the thing. But it would have been cool to be in that moment and actually have done that in that match, because now, what is that, 15 years later? People are still doing it. That would be something I would love to go back in time and be a part of. And again, it wasn't the main event, but it was remembered more than even the pay-per-view name, because I can't remember. I know the logo was green or something.
I thought it was SummerSlam.
Was it SummerSlam?
For the first one, I think it was.
First one, yeah. Because they had that ladder match or whatever for Terry Runnels' time.
Yeah, they
God,
the Invitational.
It was tits. Yeah, it was the Terry Invitational. Yeah.
But like, look at that. That's including the same kind of stuff. But the chemistry and the ideas and the flowing didn't matter at all in that match because nobody cared. Where you take that same equipment and you put it with these guys that are super talented, and it's the same people, but a different story of people where we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're, hey, what do you do good? Oh, what do you do good? Oh, I could take this really good for you. And you could tell these guys talk like that in the match. Like Bubba Ray Dudley's Bubba Bomb is just a sit out. Okay, but these guys were taking it and flipping upside down. And you're like, oh, I would never take that move. And then as you're a wrestler, you do it to somebody and you see the reaction in the crowd. And it's like, why doesn't anybody do this anymore? And I just would love to be part of that. And after working with all of them, on my own in life, their minds are amazing. And it really would have been cool to be part of that flourishing topic at the time, which was TLC.
Man, there's so much more meat on the bone, so much more that we would love to get into with you, but I know we are pushed against the clock right now. Mike, is there any chance you would definitely take us up on the offer and come back and share more experiences and stories with us?
Absolutely. I know my fiance, who's now my wife in a week, Allie Rex, really wanted to get on this as well, but she's a little under the weather right now. Not any of the crazy stuff going on in the world right now, just something strep throat. But she's sleeping, so when I came home from work, she was already asleep. So we could definitely reschedule and get her on too. I know she has a lot on her mind. She's doing things with Ring of Honor right now, still, even though she's injured. So keeping her thoughts out there would be something she'd love to do.
We'll let her know we send our thoughts and prayers, and hopefully she gets feeling better soon. And we would absolutely love to have you guys come back on here and hear more stories. That's what this whole thing is about. It's getting to know the people behind the personas and how they feel about all of this, because it's such a fascinating world that you guys live in, and it's interesting to know how your experiences dovetail into other things and what leads to other things, and how everybody, it seems to be, and Ritt, you and I have talked about this on the phone, it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You take one person and it connects to another person and it connects to another person. Yep. You literally all are in this intertwined family. You might be first cousins or second cousins or third cousins, yep, but in some way you guys are all tied into each other. And I think that is one of the coolest things. So,
yeah, for sure, man. And honestly, I think if anything positive came out of this pandemic is I think a lot of wrestlers came together and realized, like, we almost lost this. I mean, it was gone for over a year, and like now wrestling in a gym in front of 20 people, awesome. We get to wrestle again. It's like we have more of a sense of appreciation for it, and I think it's caused a little less hate in wrestling. I think there's a lot less, oh, there's a show running by my show this week. It's like, oh, thank God, wrestling's back. And I think that's helping us a lot with the wrestling family, and everybody who kind of joins this thing signs on for different reasons, and every reason matters. And the more you interact with people and you find out their why, the how to do it seems a lot easier.
What are some things you'd like to plug? Let the audience know right now. Where can they find you on social media? Where can they buy your merch? Where can they buy your wife's merch? All that kind of details. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
So at The Big Orlando is my Twitter and Instagram. Trying to get the Twitter thing going better, so please follow me on that. Facebook.com/Elite Athlete. It's old school page there, and then ProWrestlingTees.com/Elite Athlete, ProWrestlingTees.com/Allie Rex, and at Allie Rex on Instagram and Twitter as well. And that's about all I got on there.
We will make sure that we push that and we put that on our social media platforms so our listeners can go ahead and follow those links. Mike, it has been a pleasure. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk to you down the road.
You too, guys. Thank you so much for this.
You got
thanks,
it.
Mike.
All righty, Mike Orlando. Wow, that was really cool. There is there's something to say about, and that's why I give Ritt a lot of credit. I mean, we go after each other and we bust each other's balls and whatnot, but Future Stars Now is something that is so important. And why it's important is because it's not just, hey, here's a autobiographical story of somebody. This is how they feel. This is about what it took. These are the people that they met. And it's so crazy because Jim Molyneux is a good friend of the show. Jim's talked about his company before. We're going to bring Jim back again. Jim loves talking about ECW, loves talking about old time wrestling. So it's kind of weird. And then we talked about Mikey and then how Mikey's connections and then New Jersey. And then it's all dovetailing together in this beautiful thing that we call wrestling.
Yeah. It's funny. Just like you said, he's got Jim, he's got Mikey, PPW. It's just all intertwined. And I was looking through the guest book and I was putting check marks of, okay, this person knows this person. And I honestly do not think that there is one person that we have interviewed on Future Stars Now that isn't connected some way with someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, so. And it's funny when you said PPW because what came to my mind when you were saying that, it's a little bit of the PP poo poo honk honk. This is our weekly shout out
to Officer Erica.
Yeah, well, you've been hanging around Boston too much. You start getting this accent going.
They're up 2-1 right now.
I saw that look on your face. You're checking over at the iPad, and you're like,
exactly. Yes. 2-run shot by Xander Bogaerts. You gotta pay attention.
You do. This was cool. So very excited. Mike Orlando. We're gonna go ahead and push his social media pages as well. Love to get a chance to get his wife on here as well. Love to hear her stories because, man, the more stories you hear, it's just it enhances your wrestling experience because these are stories that you're not going to hear everywhere, and the only place you're going to hear them is right here.
Exactly, on Front Row Material or Future Stars Now.
You know what? This right here, I can't even. No, it's this way.
You're right the first time.
This is the future CT, if you know what I'm saying. If you can read between the lines, this is what the future of CT is going to be. And you know what? We got more people in the Rolodex. Things are going to continue to be fun. So we are going to step out for a break.
And we're going to play a touching commercial.
Yes, we are.
It is for one of our guests for next week. I'm excited for him.
This is going to be good.
This man has been a personal favorite of mine for many years. And he is the Pope, Elijah Burke, next week at 10 o'clock.
Let's take a look.